Hi, I'm Nikki Jovicic from LookUpStrata. It's mid-January 2024, and we're speaking with SCA New South Wales President Stephen Brell about the results of a New South Wales Strata Defects survey that was released towards the end of 2023. Although the report had some alarming stats, it also highlighted some positives. So, Stephen, welcome. Are you able to tell us more about the survey and the SCA collaboration with Building Commission New South Wales? Why was the research carried out and who contributed?
Thank you so much, Nikki. Yeah, so this is the second survey that SCA New South Wales members have been involved in. The first such survey was undertaken back in 2021, and it was really a remit of our New South Wales Building Commissioner, David Chandler, where he wanted to understand the types of defects that were occurring in strata buildings. And then once he gathered that information, he could then make informed decisions on the best policies and ways forward in order to remediate those defects and actually put pillars in place that would assist strata owners in New South Wales to be able to effectively pursue building defects and have other different avenues that they should pursue building defects for within their strata properties. So yeah, that was the origin of the actual original defect work. Ongoing, these surveys, we hope to do them. David originally said every 2 years, but I think now, because of the success of the 23 survey, I think he may actually be looking at doing them every year. And the reason being is to set some baseline data to ensure that the policies that he has put in place are actually working on the ground. So that's what the premise of the surveys are.
Okay, excellent. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and great results have come back in. I believe that you
Yep.
had lots of people respond this time. The responses were up from last time, and hopefully that will continue the trend as well if
Yeah,
you're doing them yearly, which would be good.
Yeah, that's right. So the 2021 survey, because that was our first, let's say, dipping our toes in the water into this particular initiative, and as far as we're aware, it's the first time anywhere in the world, from a strata point of view, that any government regulation has partnered with industry to try and come up with this data. So that's why it was really exciting for us. So the 2021 survey was really the baseline, and there were a lot of learnings that we took out of that. Accompanied within New South Wales. So last year we had the implementation of Strata Hub, which was great because that actually identified the buildings that were eligible for the survey. So these were buildings that were within their statutory warranty period. And what happened there was, following the gathering of that data through Strata Hub, the Office of Building Commissioner then reached out to strata managers and said, hey, could you please participate in the survey? And I must stress, this was done by strata managers and strata committee members who actually put their data into the survey. And to your point, yes, we were very pleased that there was a 30% increase in the number of participants in the 2023 survey. The other really pleasing thing, I think we had a 41% response rate, which, anyone doing a survey will tell you that was an excellent response rate. So it was very, very rich data that we were able to gather on behalf of the Building Commissioner. So we're really proud of the results.
Excellent, and
Yep.
congratulations on that as well.
Thank you.
So, we're talking about serious defects. So, for our listeners out there, what does
Mhm.
qualify as a serious defect? What kind of buildings? Is it all buildings or just certain buildings that were taken into account? And what were the most common serious defects that you found reported?
Yeah, great question. So the survey was primarily restricted to Class 2 buildings, which, for your listeners, is generally buildings 3 stories and above, and which are residential in their approach. So it didn't take into account commercial, industrial, or retail buildings. It certainly did take into account any mixed-use schemes. They were included in the survey, but the commercial elements weren't included. A subtle difference between the 2021 survey and the 2023 survey: in the 2021 survey, the classification of a major defect actually wasn't specified by the government. So it was really based upon those participating in the survey to look at whatever building defects reports they may have obtained and then classify their own defects. From those results, the government came back for the 2023 survey and said, right, we've identified 6 particular trends, which we consider are major defects, for the 2023 survey. So those 6 major areas were waterproofing issues, fire safety, enclosures, which is simply the building enclosures, so things like your roofing waterproofing and window waterproofing, those sorts of things, structural elements of the building, compliant cladding or fire combustible cladding, and the last one was key services. So key services to the buildings, things being like mechanical ventilation, major appliances like car stackers, garage doors, security systems, and those sorts of things. And so that's part of the reason why. And this is a stat which has been, let's say, misinterpreted by a lot of readers of the report. On the surface, it looks like major defects have increased from 39% to 53%. Okay, and whilst that's true, the reason for that is because of this classification now, and it's a little bit more clearer for strata managers and strata committees that are participating in the survey. They actually understand what the 6 key major defect items that the commissioner is looking for in the results. So that's part of the reason that's contributed to that increase. What is really pleasing out of the survey is that since the Building Commissioner's appointment back in late 2019, that defects in buildings that were constructed from 2020 are on the decline. So that's a really good news story for strata owners in New South Wales.
Definitely, that's
Yep.
that's fantastic news. So you
Yep.
mentioned about the 39% of buildings that were reported last time. This time,
Yep.
yeah, you have mentioned it's increased to 53%. So that's at an estimated cost to owners corporations of $79 million, or an average of $283,000 per building. So that's quite alarming. And what sort did you see some of the defects increase, or some particular parts of the defects decrease? What were you seeing in there with regards to that?
Yes, we did. So quite pleasingly, the major and one of the elements of a building that causes the most, let's say, cost for owners in remediating is waterproofing. So what was quite pleasing is that we saw a 20% reduction in waterproofing issues reported. What we did see, however, was fairly significant increases in fire safety that was reported by owners corporations. Now, part of the reason for this, we believe, is because strata managers and strata committees were relying on defect reports in the 2021 report to report what their defects were. And a lot of the, let's say, basic defect reports you get, they actually don't identify fire defects, because that's a very specialist area of building construction. So this particular focus was, the reports were gathered using data from fire engineers and that sort of thing. So that's part of the reason why there was an increase in fire defects. The other big increase was in key services, because this was something which is identified by the Commissioner in the 2021 report that owners corporations should be looking at. So things like, are the major appliances in your property working as they should be? That was also in part, I think, we've seen a trend here in New South Wales, and I'm sure this is the same across Australia, for new apartments to have what I call smart building technologies built into their premises. And like often what we see when there is a new product introduced to market, often there are teething issues with those products. So things like, we've had license plate recognition systems put in for garage doors, face recognition systems put in for security systems in strata schemes, far more sophisticated renewable and sustainable initiatives put into buildings like solar paneling and so forth. So whenever these things are put in, often because they're new technologies, they can present a few challenges and teething issues when they are put in. And these are the sorts of things which came out in the report as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So are you thinking some of the initial stats that came out of 2021, some of those defects might actually have been in the buildings from fire and essential services, but they just weren't reported at that time because people weren't aware that they were due to report those issues?
Exactly right. And it was more, it's more due to, something like a water leak is far more evident, to a layperson than what a fire defect would be. So again, this time around, there were a couple of more experts and engineers that were involved in the gathering of the data, which helped strata managers and also strata committee members in their reporting, which was great.
Okay, wonderful. So we're talking about some of the alarming stats that came through, but it wasn't all bad news, was it? There was quite good news in there. You've mentioned that the newer buildings are showing a decline in incidences of serious defects. So what else came out of it that was actually quite positive and quite good news?
Yeah, so what was really pleasing was structural defects in total were down by about 7%. There were no buildings, thankfully, reported when you hope you wouldn't be with combustible cladding. So that was great. Apart from that, as I said, the participation levels in the survey were on the increase. The other thing which was what we wanted to see, in the 2021 survey, it was reported that only 14% of owners corporations were actually reporting their defects to the regulator. This time around, we've seen a fairly significant increase to 34% of owners corporations reporting defects to the regulator, which is what we want to see, because if the regulator is aware of what the defects are, then that leads to them to being able to create, policy on the ground that will help owners corporations remediate their defects in the long term. So these trends were quite encouraging, from 2021 to 2023, which was again pleasing, as I said.
Excellent. So although one of the other things that was concerning me was although 71% of those resolved their defects by agreement with the builder or the developer, which I thought was quite good, not even half of the buildings with all works completed had serious defects resolved within a year. So do you expect the resolution of defects to improve over the next few years at all?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. And again, this is one of the fairly significant things to come out, certainly in New South Wales, from the Building Commissioner's appointment. So prior to 2020, the major way that an owners corporation or a body corporate in New South Wales would remediate their defects would be through litigation. And it really was the only avenue that was available to them in order to get their defects resolved. This was a flaw in the system that David Chandler identified very, very early on in his appointment. And now what's very pleasing since his appointment is that an owners corporation has a variety of different ways that they can have their building defects remediated. So there's been a couple of very important pieces of legislation passed in New South Wales since 2020. The first being the Design Building Practitioners Act, and the second being the RAB Act, which is the Residential Apartment Buildings Act. Now, these two pieces of legislation, give the Building Commissioner a whole wide-ranging powers in order to enter sites and issue work orders to developers and builders during the construction phase. But it also allows owners corporations to actually pursue those in the supply chain that may have contributed to a defect issue in the building. So certainly under the Design Building Practitioners Act, anyone involved in the design process of a building can also be held liable for any part that they had to play in a construction defect or in the defect process. So that's another legal avenue that was open to owners corporations. The other thing which has occurred is a program in New South Wales which was piloted last year, something called Project Intervene. Now, what this allows, and I think this is probably the best project that I've seen in New South Wales, certainly since my time in Strata, it allows an owners corporation to ask the regulator, i.e. New South Wales Fair Trading, or more precisely Construct New South Wales, to come in and do a complete building defect report for their scheme. That report is undertaken free of charge for the owners corporation. Then what occurs there is any major defects that are found in the building under those 6 elements that we spoke about earlier, the Office of Building Commissioner effectively goes into bat for the owners corporation with the developer and negotiates a resolution to have those things fixed. Now, that is all done at zero cost to the owners corporation, which, you mentioned before, the cost of remediating defects is, upwards of $250,000 per apartment. A large portion of that is attributable to engineers, legal fees, and so forth, and actually fighting defects. So taking the fight out of the process we really hope is going to contribute to getting defects remediated far more costly and far more efficiently for owners in New South Wales. Now, I should stress here, there are other elements that are available to owners corporations, so they can still pursue a legal action through the Home Building Act. We also have something in our New South Wales legislation called Part 11, which is another initiative of the previous New South Wales government to assist with remediating defects. So there's about half a dozen avenues that are available to an owners corporation now to pursue defects, and that's all come about since the Commissioner's appointment back in 2020, where prior to that they only had one avenue, which was a legal route. So having these alternative routes for owners corporations is really helping them get their defects remediated. It'll take a little bit of time for the rubber to hit the road on that. Like, I appreciate the report. Yes, it is taking a fairly long time for defects to be remediated, but we're hopeful that these new initiatives will allow owners corporations to get their defects remediated far more quickly and far more cost effectively, which is the major thing.
Mm.
Yep.
Okay, so as on a practical note, if you're a lot owner or a committee member sitting in a building and you've just discovered that you've got some major defects, what's the first thing you should do? What's your protocol?
Yeah, the beauty about this to participate in Project Intervene, all it takes is a resolution of the Strata Committee Owners Corporation, or the Strata manager can actually lodge that application on behalf of the owners. And the other thing is, you don't even have to, like, you just may suspect that you have defects in your building. And again, most owners are lay people. They're not engineers. They're not building experts. They're not quite familiar. But if you suspect that you have a defect, then you're concerned about it, you can approach the Building Commissioner's office and they will send out their inspectors out to your scheme to have a look. Now, to support this initiative, and this was a great move, I think, by the government in New South Wales, back on the 1st of December in 2023, so last year, there were 400 inspectors that were rerouted to the Building Commissioner's office to help him in his initiative to, let's say, improve confidence in the construction sector in New South Wales. So not only, from a legislative point of view, sorry, try and get that out, is he being supported with the proper legislation, he's also been giving the resources on the ground in order to get these initiatives pushed through, which is very, very pleasing to see in New South Wales. So a great initiative all round, and hopefully, again, we will see the results over the next couple of years.
Yes, and hopefully we'll see some of these initiatives coming into other states as well to help
Yeah,
help
that's
our
right.
readers.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
David often, I mean, look, again, I think it is a let's say, sign of success where he's being approached by. I know he's been approached by Victoria. I know he's been approached by Queensland. I think he's quite happy here in New South Wales, I've got to say. But again, it is certainly, let's say, a template that can be used by other states and say, okay, this is how you can actually get these things done. And getting back to the original point of our conversation, all of this started with the data that was gathered by the surveys. And that's the reason why the surveys are so important.
So as we head into 2024, what other challenges may New South Wales Strata face this year, do you think? And are we well placed to meet the challenges?
Yeah, so I think we are. I think from a building defect point of view, I think the challenge still remains for strata managers and for SCA and the government to really get the word out to owners in strata that you do have these alternatives. So whilst it's pleasing that we've gone from 14% reporting their problems to the regulator to 34%, I would like to see that number increase, because if the regulator knows what's going on the ground, then, as I said, they can implement policy to do that. So it's really getting the message out there for owners to say, look, there are avenues available for you. They don't have to be expensive avenues in order for you to remediate your defects. Again, I would encourage anyone, jump onto the New South Wales government website, have a look at Project Intervene. There are a couple of caveats to it. The first one is that your building must be in the statutory warranty period, so it must be up to 6 years old. I know that there have been a couple of buildings that went past their warranty period that the Project Intervene did accept. So that's point number one. The other thing is that the developer stroke builder for your scheme must still be liquid. So if they've gone into bankruptcy and there's no one to pursue, then regrettably your owners corporation can't participate in Project Intervene. But as long as the developer or builder are still around, then the government can enter into negotiations with them in order to remediate the defects for your property. The other good thing about this is a developer can actually fight what's called a building works rectification order. And David will be quite chuffed with me saying this. I think he has a record, I think it's about 12-0 now, of where developers have tried to push him through the Land and Environment Court, but he's come out winning every single time. So the building works rectification orders, they are steadfast. They do look at the major defects in those 6 categories, which we mentioned before: waterproofing, fire safety, enclosures, structural, cladding, and key services for the building. And again, that's something which I think is very important for residents and owners to understand. We're not talking about cosmetic defects here, in a scheme. Okay, whilst they are, in themselves, quite troublesome and annoying, we are talking about the major building elements of the property. And again, there are other avenues available for owners corporations to pursue those defects should they wish. And again, that's through the Home Building Act and other remedies in that regard. But again, I think one of the challenges is certainly awareness and letting owners understand that they do have additional rights now under the new legislation regimes that have come in. So yeah, it's all about promoting, and forums like this, like LookUpStrata, certainly help spread that message.
And we're very happy to do that as well.
Yep.
All right, Stephen. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. Great talking to you.
No worries at all, Nikki. Thanks for the invite, and look forward to catching up to you at some other time. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you. If you gained value from this video, please hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for information about parking, strata insurance, defects and more, head over to lookupstrata.com.au or sign up to our free weekly newsletter via the link in the description box below.